Welcome to the continuation of our GDPR compliancy checklist, and the month now is November, and we're going to talk a little bit more about documentation and policies. In the last video we talked about privacy notices and all the complexity associated with those, but that isn't the only documentation that you need to get ready for May 2018, is it, Rusia? Do you want to talk to us about what else you need to be thinking about around the whole policy piece?
Obviously, if you are compliant with the Data Protection Act at the moment, you might have some policies in place, say for example, a general data protection policy, a policy to handle with data subjects requests, an IT security policy, and all these policies now need to be revised, and some new policies will need to be put in place. So in terms of subject access requests, if you have a policy dealing with subject access requests, now the requirements under the GDPR has changed. So for example, the deadline to answer has been reduced to 30 days, well, 1 month. That could, it still can be extended, but obviously that needs a refresh of the policies and also the training in the future. In terms of breach notification, if there is some policy already dealing with incident recording or logging, now that again the requirements has been enhanced, and now it is quite challenging actually, because now if there is a breach, you need to notify the ICO in 72 hours if there is a risk for the rights of freedoms of individuals, and you need to be ready for that. And so that policy is a very important one, because you even perhaps need to think about forming a breach incident team who is ready to deal with that, and all who would be responsible for that, who will be responsible for completing the forms, and also even including some templates in the policies for the officers or members of the staff use them if there is a breach of data. Also in terms of privacy impact assessments, so we haven't seen many privacy impact assessment policies in place under the Data Protection Act. Also, obviously, we have seen organizations carrying out privacy impact assessment in practice, because it is good practice, obviously, and also because it helps you to minimize risks. So it's something that we have been doing for years. But now we talked about privacy impact assessments. I think that a separate policies for privacy impact assessments is required, because now it's going to be mandatory if you are engaged in new IT systems, or if you are processing sensitive personal data, or if you are processing data in a way that could put the rights and freedoms of the individuals under risk. And because it's going to be mandatory, staff need to be ready, or the relevant people who will be responsible for carrying out the privacy impact assessment need to be ready. And since with the subject access rights, say for example, right to be forgotten or right to data portability, and it will need to be included in the data protection policies as well.
So they're sort of policies really to help people understand what they need to do if you get a request for portability or you get a subject access request.
Yeah.
What about some of the other new things like profiling, Rusia, and privacy by design? I've heard mentioned somewhere that it might be necessary to have a policy around privacy by design. Have you got any thoughts on that?
Yes, I think that all these actions you need to undertake in an organization to assure the privacy by design is linked to your IT security policy. So it's something that you need to think about in terms to assess who is going to be responsible for that, and perhaps it's something that you can include by updating your IT security policy.
So moving into December, Rusia, and the business is probably still working on all of its policies, but what should you be thinking about doing before the end of 2017?
Well, Sally, if organizations have been thorough on this and working hard, and they have gotten all through the checklist that we were talking about since July, perhaps they will be in a situation now where they understand, they have a global understanding of all the processing activities, and also they have the draft documentation, privacy notice, consent forms, and all the policies that we were talking about before. And if they are in that point, what it is a good practice before going live is testing all the documents that you've got. So, for example, for the privacy notices, what the ICO says is that a good way of testing your privacy notice and your consent forms before they go live is just selecting a sample of your customers, your employees, and ask them to use the privacy notice and ask them for feedback, obviously. So then you have an understanding of whether or not it really works, whether or not they really understand the privacy notice, or whether or not you need to make some little tweaks before displaying them. And then the policies is something very, very important to test. At least those concerning breach notification and privacy impact assessment, because we are seeing in practice that we are helping organizations to implement the privacy impact assessment structure in the organization. And then you have the training module, you have the templates, you have the policy in place, but when the staff is about using them and they are undertaking a privacy impact assessment, then there are a lot of queries that you can have and you need to deal with. And you don't want to stop a project because there are queries regarding the way to use the privacy impact assessment, and you don't want to put the organization under risk either. So it's very, very important to test the privacy impact assessment. If you are, for example, thinking about using the personal data for a new purpose, or if you need to refresh consent, or consider whether or not you need to refresh consent. That's a very good option to involve the stakeholders and to involve relevant staff and ask them to undertake a privacy impact assessment to see how it works before May arrives.
Yeah. Thank you. And that's all we have for November and December. Thank you for watching.